Welcome to SheBoss. I am thrilled today to be joined with Amber James, who is the owner of New Beginnings Family Law. And I've had the absolute pleasure of getting to know Amber over the past couple of months. Sat down and had a chance to chat with you for a while and was just blown away at you and your story and just what you're doing today in our community. So thank you so much for carving time out of your day to join us today for SheBoss.
Oh, Megan, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to pull out all of these threads of what you do because I'm just really fascinated about your field. Not only from just seeing things from the outside in, but being part of it myself, and just fascinating. But let's start with a little bit about you and kind of let's take us back to what sort of, got you into law and we'll get there, but where are you from? What brought you here? And just give a little bit of history on you.
Sure. So I'm originally from Wisconsin. Lived there as a child. Our house burned down. My dad moved us to Alabama because he said he would never live in a place where it snowed again. It was 20 below the day that our house burned down. And so he's like, I will never live in a place where there's snow again. So then we moved to Alabama, and what does it do? It snows. Yeah. So Dad didn't get us quite far enough south to get away from snow. But my mom had family in the Attala-Gadsden area, and so we moved there near their family. Then we moved to Aniana for my dad's work, and that's where I kind of finished school. I went to Susan Moore High School, went to UAB for undergraduate, and got my master's there, and then went to Birmingham School of Law at night, which there's a whole, long story for all of that. But I fell in love with the law because my dad and I used to sit around and watch Matlock, and Perry Mason and all the shows.
Yes.
And, when you watch those TV shows, you assume law kind of happens in a very condensed format. And there's always an aha moment. And then, somebody folds on the witness stand. It's great. And so I fell in love with that as a kid because that was something my dad and I did together as we watched these shows together. My dad went through periods of time in my life when he was disabled or unable to work. And so instead of my mom being the person who stayed home with me, it was my dad. Okay. And so my dad would stay home and we would watch these TV shows together. And I'm like, that's who I'm going to be when I grow up. I'm going to be a lawyer. And then kind of life happened in the interim between being a child and loving Perry Mason and Matlock and eventually going to law school because I married someone and it didn't work out. And in that relationship, though, I didn't believe I could, graduate. I could go or graduate from law school. That was just not a possibility. I allowed him to let me believe that I was less than and that I wasn't smart enough to do something. And so I didn't do it until a little later in life. So
yeah, a little bit of a delayed start on what you knew was possible, right? Yeah. So I would love to hear a little bit back to the story about your dad and watching Matlock and Perry Mason.
Sure.
Did the two of you sort of pull apart these cases and talk about the scenarios and what was the commentary behind the scenes between the two of you, the kind of banter?
Sure. So my dad was my hero when I was little. I had a very difficult relationship with my mom. And it was kind of up and down my whole life, but there were definitely periods when it was great. But my dad was my hero at the time. And so we would talk about what it meant to be a lawyer, what lawyers really do in real life. We would talk about the cases and, my dad didn't really have any life experience either that would have told him that wasn't real either, But, in the commercial breaks, he'd look at me and say things like, well, who do you think did it? And then, of course, I'm 4, 5, and 6 years old, and I'm like, I think so-and-so did it, and, we'll see how that pans out. So it was very kind of elementary, but making sure that we, continue to talk and stay involved during, commercial breaks and such.
Can I just say, I love that about your dad and thinking that even though you're 4 and 5 years old, you can handle subject matter that may not be necessarily the first thing that most parents decide to put on. Yes. Because I think it just kind of gives a different perspective to your child and makes him think about things that they don't get exposure to very often.
No. Yeah. My dad was never one to really say, here we didn't have Blue's Clues and things like that when I'm 4 and 5 years. I mean, I'm closer to 50 than I am 40 at this point. So, we had, Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes and things like that. And my dad would periodically want to watch that, but more or less he was like, no, this is what I want to watch. And children watch what the adults want to watch, not so much that, I'm going to sit and watch whatever my kid wants to watch. So it was a different kind of upbringing in that regard.
Yeah, I love that though. I love that though. So kind of flash forward, you go and get your master's degree and then you decide to go to law school. obviously this was an influence in some capacity, but what was that kind of sort of turning point for you that said, this is what I'm going to do?
Sure.
And I'd be curious if you had the desire to want to start your own practice when you decided to go to law school, or did that come after the fact?
Well, that definitely came after the fact.
Okay.
So I was really lost. I have an undergraduate degree in music. I have a master's degree in business. What are you going to do with that? Like, if you're not living in Nashville, you're not going to do music business generally, or Memphis or somewhere where there's a big music center. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to go into government service of some kind. I had applied for an FBI internship, made it to eventually the last round of that, but didn't really understand politics and the need to get somebody to write recommendation letters for you. Because I'm a poor kid. Grew up in a mobile home. And so I didn't have influential people in my life like that could kind of push that over the edge for me. So when I didn't get that, I was like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? My student loans are coming due. It's like something's got to give. And so I went back to school. That was my solution. So I went back to UAB. I had minored in political science. And so I thought, well, I'll finish that degree. And I don't know what's going to do with that, but I'll finish that. I'll do some advertising or journalism, and maybe I'll sort out life at some point. But right now I just need to delay my student loan payments. That was my initial thought. And so I took a constitutional law class as part of my political science curriculum, and my professor, whose name now escapes me, I can see him, but I can't. The name is just killing me that I can't remember. And one night in class, because I went to school at night and worked during the day. I was actually teaching gymnastics at the time, so I had a bunch of snotty gym mats in my car, as I always say, because I was going to daycares teaching gymnastics because I had a dance background. And so I was doing that, here you got 2 degrees and you're teaching gymnastics.
You got to do what you got to do. So kudos to you.
You got to do to make money.
Snotty gym mats and all.
Yeah, snotty gym mats and all. So I went to class that night, and he and I were talking after class. He goes, "Why are you not in law school?" He goes, "You're wasting your time here." And I'm like, I can't go to law school. My marriage is falling apart. I have a toddler. Where am I going to get the money to go to law school? And nobody's going to support me financially. There's no way I can quit working, take care of my son and take care of myself, and not sure what's going to happen with this marriage. It's rough. It's rocky. And he's like, you don't have to quit working. He's like, you can go to Birmingham School of Law. He goes, clearly your parents are going to help you out because, they're helping you now while you're kind of in this separated but not yet divorced phase of life. He goes, you find a job in a law firm during the day, you go to law school at night. If you have no intention of leaving Alabama, what does it matter? He goes, what does it matter? He goes, find a law firm where you're comfortable and maybe they'll let you stay, after you graduate. And I was like, that is such a great idea, but you're nuts. This cannot happen. I'm not smart enough to do that. And he said, you most definitely are. Why don't you believe in yourself? And so we had this whole very
this is a professor of yours.
A professor. And he's not much older than I am. He's a lawyer at a big law firm in Birmingham, and he actually had a desire for government service, and he eventually did go work for one of the 3-lettered government agencies doing some intelligence work. So not long after I graduated, but after I had this experience with him, but I am a religious person. I know we said we're not going to talk too much about religion, but I prayed all the way home. I really did. I prayed. I said, God, you got to, if this is what you want me to do, you're going to have to stick up a flashing sign somewhere and say, this is it, you know, or make the path straight for me. Help that if you mean for me to do this, you've got to make it straight. Yeah. And in my heart, I really felt like I was there to help hurting people. What that meant, though, I didn't really understand. I had a lot of, I didn't have any lawyers in my family, but I had a lot of family with legal experience. Not from the side of a lawyer, though, from the other side, from the side of
exposure to the legal system.
We had a lot of exposure to the legal system. Spent a lot of time in courtrooms as a kid for various and sundry purposes, but more than I wanted. But got to see it, kind of firsthand then too. But nonetheless, I went home that night. I looked at Birmingham School of Law. I looked to see if I was going to need to take the LSAT. It turns out my GPA from my undergraduate was high enough to waive me in without the LSAT. It had an online form to fill out, filled out the online form, submitted it, kept my fingers crossed. I don't know what's going to happen from this point. Immediately started looking for jobs in the legal field. Found 2 pretty quickly. Had to choose between one or the other. One was insurance defense. So representing insurance companies and working as a paralegal in that field, or working in a personal injury law firm. And I thought for sure, like, I'm going to go help hurting people. Those are the people on this side. I don't want to be on this side. I want to be on this side. So I took the job at a law firm in Birmingham doing personal injury work. Stayed there for about 15 months. And then all of a sudden, one of my friends from law school was in the elevator with me going to class one night. He says, tomorrow you're going to go tell Judge Ferguson what day you can start your new job. I said, I'm not really looking for a new job. My boss by that point was paying for my books and part of my tuition. And, so I was getting a lot of kind of benefits of being in this job. It was very low paying, but he was paying for a lot of things because he really did want me to stay and practice law there at some point, when I graduated. Yeah. But my friend Guy McCombs, looked at me. He goes, tomorrow you're going to go talk to Judge Ferguson and tell him when you can start your new job. So at lunch, I put on the suit, like the jacket, and had my resume, and I marched up to the courthouse. And Miss Page, who was our front desk judicial assistant, looked at me. She goes, oh, are you here to see Judge Ferguson about your new job? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, go on back. And so I go back and I introduce myself. Now, interestingly enough, Judge Ferguson had signed my divorce decree. So between the time I start law school and about 15 months in, I get divorced. And I had never met him, didn't know him. It was uncontested by the time we got down to the end of it. So I had no idea who he was. And so I walk in. I said, good morning, Your Honor. I'm Amber Yerke. That was my maiden name. And I'm here about a position. I have my resume. He goes, I don't need your resume. I just need to know when you can start. Your friend Guy has already told me everything I need to know about you. And I said, well, I need to give my current boss 2 weeks. And he goes, is it going to take that long? And I said, I think it would only be fair. He goes, I appreciate that. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And 2 weeks later, I started working in Judge Ferguson's office. So in Birmingham, the court is divided into chunks. So you have the domestic relations court, where there are 3 judges that hear nothing but divorces and custody modifications, anything arising out of a divorce in one courthouse. You have family court, which is where your protection orders and your juvenile court things happen. You have your criminal courthouse, and you have a civil courthouse. So now I am plunged into the life of being the law clerk for a domestic relations attorney. And that's where I finally developed this love of family law, because I'm like, wow, these people really do hurt. Like, there's nobody that hurts worse than the children in these cases, than the parties in these cases. I saw parties go to jail for failing to follow court orders. I saw children having to come into a courtroom and testify. And I'm like, this is where real pain exists. Yeah. And then in the interim, I meet my husband, that I've now been married to for 20 years. And he had a horrible divorce. Mine was, we separated off and on, and but by the time we got down to the end of it, it was uncontested. We all signed an agreement. We filed it. That wasn't the same for him. And I watched the pain and the agony of what he went through fighting to see his kid, and fighting to have a relationship with him. And I knew that was it. I would always be a family law attorney. Did not plan to hang my own shingle, though. That was a whole new, experience. And but when I got out of law school, I moved to Decatur, which is where he was, my husband was, and found out that a lot of small law firms don't want to just drag in a new baby lawyer. So thankfully, I had a husband with a stable job and stable income, and he gave me the kind of go-ahead. He's like, you know what, just do it yourself. You want to do it differently? Do it yourself. I'll be here. I'll support you. Yeah. We'll make this work. You start your practice. And so that's what I did.
Wow. And that was 18 years ago.
Yeah.
So talk about doing it differently. This is obviously a very, you have a very clear mission of sort of the path that you want to take. What is it about New Beginnings that sort of does it differently when you say that?
Sure. We try to understand that each client doesn't come to us because they have a legal problem. They have a personal problem. They have a problem going on in their lives that has a legal solution to it. Their relationship is falling apart. Their other side's not paying their child support. They're wanting to grow their family, and they haven't been able to conceive a child on their own. They're having a personal problem that has a partially legal solution, but there are parts of what's going to happen to them or what needs to happen for them that has nothing to do with the law. That has to do with therapy and counseling and coaching and just being there for them, somebody holding their hand. And so we take a very team approach to every one of our cases where we tell our clients, we are all here to hold your hand. Like, there's 5 lawyers in this office, and I might be the person who's your direct attorney, but there's 4 other people over here rooting for you every day that that we want to see you have a better life. And I knew the mistakes I had made as a wife. I knew the mistakes my husband had made as a husband, my first husband, and myself as a wife that time. And I knew I was going to see that again and again in my clients. Yeah. And I wanted them to have a chance at a better start. Like, when you leave this case, I want you to really have thought through, where did I mess up? Like, they were a horrible person, but what did I allow, or what in me allowed that in my life? How can I make stronger and better decisions for myself going forward? Yeah. When I got divorced, my lawyer it was my boss at the time, threw my papers on my desk and just said, "Hey, congratulations, you're divorced. Happy New Year. Hope you have a lot of fun being a single woman this weekend." That wasn't what I needed to hear. Yeah. I needed somebody to have sat down and, "Here, Amber, here's your divorce papers.
Here's what they mean."
Yeah, here's what they mean. Yeah. Here's what happens if he doesn't do the things it says he's supposed to do. This is what you do when that happens. How are you feeling? What other resources can I get for you that might be helpful in helping you start over? Yeah. I got divorced in December, and by April I was signing my house over to the bank because I couldn't afford to keep it. And things happened and things didn't get paid that should have gotten paid. Yeah. And going back to court when you're in law school and you're already struggling, that really wasn't an option for me. The best option was for me to file for bankruptcy protection and sign my house back over. Yeah. I mean, that was probably the lowest day of my life when I'm standing there and somebody hands me a thing and goes, "Sign here and we'll take your house." And I never wanted another woman to go through that. Yeah. Like, all these things, kind of like all these influences I had, made me want to start, I didn't start it out as New Beginnings. It just started out as James Family Law Center. Yeah. It took a while to get to the real concept of what it was I was trying to accomplish, which is trying to help these clients have a new beginning. Yeah. Have a new start at life, whether that's financially or emotionally or socially or with their kids. Like, this is a chance to kind of like put a pin in what happened in life, learn from where we were, and then figure out what is next for me, and what's next for my family.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a what a fascinating background too. Again, and I know you're a little bit silly earlier, but you've had a lot of exposure to the legal system, and you've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, all of the red tape and the excess stuff that just is not necessary. And, you don't know what you don't know. No one goes into a marriage ever intending for it to end. I was in the same situation as you after 10 years, and you don't even know which way is up, frankly. And so getting that guidance and having a resource there that can really guide you through to understand what this actually means. I think so many people do get kind of fascinated or latched onto it's final, then what, and they don't think about the then what type of scenario. Right. And anyway, so there's, what would you say? I mean, not to hone in too much on the divorce side of it, but you and I are in similar circles. There's a lot of women here, right? Yes. We're both part of WEDC, and you're part of Women's Business Center or the council, excuse me. And, whether you're a woman or a man, right? Not knowing kind of how to maneuver through this path. Right. Wish it could always be amicable on both sides and it just be a piece of cake, but that's not the case. And I think it's a lot of like, we just don't know, or you don't know what those options are and kind of what you can do there. Sure. So what would you say are some of maybe the top 3 mistakes or so that individuals make when going through that divorce that it either costs them significant amount of money that they just, or anything like that kind of comes to mind? Sure.
I think the biggest mistake is they don't listen to their attorneys. That is their biggest mistake. Like,
so listen to your attorney.
To your lawyer. When we tell you, our courts are very focused on a 50-50 arrangement for your kids. Unless there's domestic violence, that's proven and that is documented, or there's drug use or alcohol use that is detrimental to your child. It's not so much that they had a glass of wine at dinner, but like somebody got a DUI. There's a lot of hope that clients are going to agree to this week-to-week kind of arrangement, and there's a lot of push for it from the court. So going to court and fighting that battle when there's not that kind of evidence on the other side is costly, and it's detrimental because what happens is you come out of court, you've said everything you want to say about the other side. You've said all the, at least as far as the judge will let you go. And now you're supposed to go co-parent together. Yeah. Even if you win, if you get custody, you still got to co-parent with that other person. So listen to your lawyer if they're telling you, this is where I think the judge is going to go, and you don't really have anything that really pushes, the the lever to your direction.
Yeah.
You need to listen.
Yeah.
2 is they don't plan financially for what comes next. Because I didn't plan financially for what came next. And I see a lot of clients that don't. Yeah. Can you make it if they don't pay the child support? Because there are times that it just happens. Some people are evil and they're just not going to pay.
Yeah.
And then some people get hurt at work. They get sick. They can't make their payments. Are you going to be able to make it on your own? Mm-hmm. I see a lot of women rely on the concept that they're going to get alimony and it's going to last for a long time. And they make what I believe is a mistake of going, well, I'm going to sit on my hands for the next 18 months while this case is pending and make no plans for my life of how I could make it on my own, hoping and praying that the court's going to give them alimony. And alimony is not a guarantee anymore. It probably was more, 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
Now it's just not as prevalent. So I always encourage women, especially if I have housewives that have stayed at home with kids, which is an incredibly admirable thing to do. It's just not adequately compensated or valued like it used to be. Mm-hmm. But I need them to start goal setting from day one.
Yeah.
What is your plan for you? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to get alimony. What if you don't?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have no plans if there's not. So not planning for your financial future, particularly as a woman, and being prepared to figure out what is next for me. I think judges like it better when we come in with a plan. Like, I've been a stay-at-home mom for 15 years. I'm going to need some help. This is my plan for myself. I'm going to go do X. I'm going to get X education. And then by this time, I'll be able to support myself. That's what they're wanting to hear. That's what our judges want to hear from our clients, is that I have a plan for how I'm going to do this for myself over time. And then probably the third thing is not really realizing the absolute devastation this is for your child. Like, kids are resilient. I say that all the time. Mm-hmm. Kids are incredibly resilient. They overcome a lot. But at the same time, you're going through something painful, and they are too. Yeah. And being, very open with your kids, not about how you feel about the other parent or what's going on from the legal standpoint, but just how are you feeling today? Right. How are these transitions affecting you? Should we buy you an extra set of clothes to have at the other house because you get tired of dragging your bag full of your stuff every Sunday or every Monday or, and the stigma that comes with that. I've watched kids in Carline when my daughter was younger and we were going to school, and every Monday there's these kids with these great big bags and backpacks, and, it's heavy on them physically, but it's heavy on them emotionally too. And so being very aware of the emotional impact that this breakup of your adult relationship is having on your children.
Yeah. So, and that's, that's a whole other avenue, right? I think where, parents, as they're trying to get through that, they oftentimes ignore that or don't put the pressure on or the focus on it as it needs to be. They just think they just want to get through this thing, right? Not really thinking about the impacts that has on their kids.
Yeah. Well, they're going through so much too. Yeah. It's an emotional, like I said, it's a personal problem. Right. I have a partial legal solution to your emotional, personal problem, but you need other resources too. I'm not a trained therapist. I can't coach you. I can give you my advice, both legal and personal, but if I refer you to someone to get help, go get help. Yeah. Because you need somebody who can help walk you through, like, changing your thought patterns around things and your mindset. I often recommend books to clients. Like, you need to read this book before the next time we get together because I want you to think about your mindset around what's going on in your world. Yeah. I generally will send them with the 4 agreements, or I'll refer them to the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, about not taking things personally and always doing your best and, always assume positive intent. Like, there's just things that you need for yourself. Yeah. As a human, and to become the better person that I hope for you to be when your divorce is over. Yeah, well, and looking at things with a clear mind where you can make rational decisions as opposed to emotionally fueled ones where you're just, I think, grounding yourself in that capacity, knowing that you're in a situation where emotions are going to be high, that you may not be looking at things, the right way or whatnot. So, so I'd be curious, is one of the tactics that you all have is to really spend some time up front and kind of counsel some of these individuals to ensure divorce is in fact the path they want to go down? Yes. I would imagine that might be a big part of this, right? To ensure that it's not just a reaction based on, you know what I mean? I don't know. Do you find yourself in that situation often? I normally will ask a client, what all have you tried to save your marriage before you came here?
Yeah.
You know, have you been to counseling? Have you dated your spouse lately? Like, when's the last time you guys went out? You know, when's the last time you guys went out for dinner together? Because what I find a lot, and what my husband and I struggled with for a while was that, and I feel like being a divorce lawyer has made me a much better wife, by the way, but that's a whole other topic. You get busy with kids and homework and sports and finances and work and all the things, and the next thing you know, these client or these parties get to, you know, empty nest stage, and they have no idea who they're living with anymore. They're like, I don't know you. Like, I don't, you know, you're a stranger to me now. Right. So we were, you know, I'm very intentional about date nights with my husband. So we didn't get to that point when the kids graduated and are now kind of in and out. At this point, we know who we are, and we still like each other, and we still do things together. But what I get a lot of is, you know, I'll just say, are you still friends? Like, do you still have things in common? Like, you know, do they know you're here? Like, have you had a conversation with them about where you are in the relationship? Or is this just something that you got your feelings hurt about something? And that's okay if it is, you know, but let's be honest about what brought you here and what efforts you've made to save your marriage before we make this decision. Yeah. And I get a lot of that from Judge Ferguson. I give him credit for that because he was a very devout Catholic, or he is a very devout Catholic. And I asked him that question when I was working for him. I'm like, can you tell me, you know, how you feel about the fact that, you know, from your perspective as a Catholic, that divorce is just wrong and it shouldn't happen. And then yet you sit on the bench every day and divorce people. Like, how do you justify that? Because I was trying to justify it for myself, right? Because these are things I'm thinking. Yeah. And he said, well, I didn't bring them here. They brought themselves here. And he was very intentional about asking them all, have you done everything you can? We'd have a settlement docket on a Friday. One Friday a month we had settlement docket. And he'd give them a speech beforehand. And one of the questions, or one of the statements he would say is, have you done everything that you can? Because divorce is like a roller coaster, too. You can start it, and then you're on it, and you feel like you can't get off. You know, you're kind of strapped in for the ride now. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be. You can push the pause button and decide, I really don't want to do this. Like, there was an emotion that brought you to this point. Yeah. But if you look back at it, do you really want this? And we'd have some couples that would, you know, sit there and talk and ask to put their case off on the administrative docket to have some time to talk about reconciliation. I've had couples reconcile. I had one couple that reconciled 3 times. It was third time was the charm. Like, it was like, you know, I think I'm done this time. You know, we have couples that reconcile all the time and decide to dismiss their cases, and then we never see them again because it was an emotional thing that drove them to a place. And then when they really thought through, like, not just emotionally, do I want to detach from you, but like, now if we split up all of our stuff, like, can each of us live on what we have? Right. And then they go, no, I really, you know, you can't create 2 households out of one and the 2 households be the same as they were when it was one. Yeah. And they think through that and go, okay, hang on, maybe this is, you know, it's worthwhile. I had a client that had finally hit 7 figures in his like net wealth. And he was like, wait a minute, if I do this, I got to go back to 6 figures. Yeah. Like, it was in his head that his entire goal in life was to, I need to have 7 figures of net worth.
That's going to be gone overnight.
And he's going to have to rebuild. And he's like, let me go to counseling first. Yeah. I never saw him again. Yeah.
You know, it's real easy to make a snap decision when you think that that's going to be a fix, as opposed to putting the hard work in. Yes. And I know we've shared this offline a little bit. I too am on my second marriage, and I think I'm way better of a wife this go around because I had I didn't know, I was so young and didn't know what I was doing, right? And it's just one of these things where, and I think our society has gotten too divorce crazy, where it's like, well, we'll just get divorced. It's like, why don't you actually put the work in and try to, you know? But I agree with you. My husband and I, it's like, if we don't have date night, you can tell, and where it's just you become kind of ships in the night, or roommates that share responsibility for children, and depending on the situation of those kids, it can be really, really hard, you know, it's just very challenging. So it's so critical to invest that time and make sure that you don't become just friends as opposed to, you know, it's just so important.
Absolutely.
So switching gears a little bit, I love how you keep referencing Judge Ferguson as being someone who was a big mentor in your life and still is, it sounds like, to this day.
I love him.
Talk to us just a little bit about mentorship and, especially in the field of law and just, being a woman and owning your own practice. Like I know with your story with Judge Ferguson, that was obviously very influential. How does that look in your life now as far as mentorship goes, whether that is to your team or it's to those that you went to law school with or, just would love to hear about how that plays a role in your life now.
Sure. So I was blessed to have Judge Ferguson. I was blessed to have my buddy Guy McCombs. We studied for the bar together. We were close. He worked for Judge Calhoun. I worked for Judge Ferguson. So we were across the hall from each other. Shared war stories, what went on in the courtroom each day. I was blessed too to have one of my really good friends, Brandy Roberts, and she and I were majorettes together. Like we twirled baton, like at different schools, but we always twirled batons together. She went to Gadsden State, then UAB, and then we both ended up at BSL at the same time in an interesting way. And having her there, we've mentored each other through law school, and then now she is a partner in a big personal injury law firm in Birmingham, and I love watching what she's doing for women lawyers in Birmingham. But from my own perspective, where I mentor, I spend a lot of time with my lawyers in my office. I particularly have a young lawyer in my office who I've known since she was 10 years old. I have watched her grow up. Her dad and I just kind of served in some political organizations together. She danced at the same dance studio with my kids. She's the same age as my niece, and ran into her again when she was at Alabama. My daughter was down there for a Rockette camp, and she had been there for the camp. And I said, so what are you doing now? And she's like, well, I'm majoring in dance and criminal justice. And I'm like, okay, great. So what are you going to do with that? And she's like, I'm either going to dance on cruise ships or go to law school. Like I can't figure out which path I want to take. And so I said, well, here's my card. When you're in town, why don't you come to the office? Just mill around, see what you think. And that was several years ago, and she's never left. So she came for Christmases and summers and spring breaks, and then went to law school and did the same thing. And then she was getting to the end of law school, and I'm like, so what are your next plans? She goes, I had not planned to leave. So can I stay?
Say no.
Yeah, I'm like, sure, absolutely. I've had the benefit of having a couple of young lawyers in my firm, some of which decided family law wasn't for them, and that was fine. I kind of hold them with an open hand, and it gives them that opportunity to investigate and see. One of them is now a prosecutor in Mobile. His whole goal was to get to the beach, and he got there. And he's not doing family law, which is something he decided, very distinctly he didn't want to do. And then I had another young lady who now is not doing law and is doing something completely different, but loves what she does. And then I have my Whitney, who has been with me forever, and I'm watching her grow and develop as a lawyer. She's been there 3 years now, and we've finally started letting her kind of go out on her own. Like we give her a little, and then we bring her back. And how did that go? And, she lost a case recently and had to really walk her through the emotions of that. And I'm like, I know today really sucks and it's really hard. But do you think you did everything you could do? And she's like, I did this. And I prepped these witnesses and I put this on. I said, okay, sometimes it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
And I said, I remember losing my first case and how devastating that was. I said, I hate to tell you something, it's going to keep happening.
Yeah. You have to not get used to losing.
Right.
But that's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Yeah.
Learn how to balance the emotions of it. So,
right. And how you bounce back, it sounds like too, right? And just taking what you learned from that and, what we could have done differently.
Right. And we do a lot of after action reviews and those kind of things, what went right, what went wrong, what was confused.
Yeah.
What could we have done differently in those circumstances? But no, I have a great team of lawyers, and I feel like we all mentor each other.
Yeah.
So I have David in my office now. He's in his 60s. And I always call him my sage, wisdom in the office, because he's the calm, in the storm kind of person.
Oh, you need one of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very important.
When I'm all upset and like, oh my gosh, so-and-so
he just
did
comes
this.
in and
he's like, okay. And he just kind of looks at me and he's like, are you done? And then we come up with a solution. Or if I write something and, I write angry sometimes, I'll type something very angrily and I'm like, oh, okay, David, you read that, So David kind of mentors me and everybody from that kind of wisdom standpoint. And then, I mentor everybody else. There's times when David comes to me for advice. Amber, how should I handle this client? Because he was in insurance defense for years and years and years, and then decided he wanted to represent real people and came to the family law firm. So, my goal is to try to help all these young lawyers that work in my office or younger lawyers have a great practice and practice differently too, because there's so much hatred and cattiness and kind of the nonsense that goes along with family law in general. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
And I try to tell any young lawyer on the opposite side of a case who wants to get all catty, I'm like, we're going to practice law together a long time.
Yeah.
I think maybe let's go have coffee.
Yeah, good for you. Let's do it the right way.
Yeah, let's try to get along. I actually had a lawyer have to do that to me lately because I was all wrapped up in my case on my side. And he's like, could we get together and talk maybe face to face and then maybe we won't be so so difficult with one another. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So we all have something to learn from that.
Yes, we do.
I'm thankful for that.
Well, and I think that is just a great lesson across the board, right? When we have tension or turmoil or disagreement, let's just talk it out, right?
Yes,
I mean, and, being at a communications firm, right? I mean, it's amazing how much wasted time and energy goes into a lack of communication, especially between women and men. And I know you sit front row to this on a daily basis. Right. But there's a reason why you hear, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, right?
That's so true.
And and it's like, you can be screaming one color and someone's hearing another. And it's just, 9 times out of 10, it seems like that's where the problems lie. Right. So if we can have some sort of mediation, approach of, hey, here's what this person is actually saying because you're looking at it all wrong. I think that would really bring the temperature down across the board in this country, not even just in the courtroom, but across the board. So
I feel like everybody should have to walk around with their disc profile, like on a name tag. That would help life so much, because, my son even said it the other day. We were in the car going somewhere and I asked him about his professor he's in the seminary. He had written a sermon and he got it back and it was covered in red. He said, it took me 40 minutes to read the comments on a 12-minute sermon. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot. I said, but did you get a lot of feedback? He said, I did. He said, but I really wanted to send something back and say, could you not have put that in bullet points? And then I could have asked you more questions about it. And I had to laugh because that's me. Like, could we put this in some bullet points? And if I have questions about your bullet points, I'll come ask you later.
As opposed to how he gave you feedback.
Everybody gives feedback differently, right? And I think it happens in relationships and marriages. Like, instead of just taking this like personality assessment where we talk about, how we want to handle money and how do we want to have kids or not have kids, like in premarital counseling. Like, really get down to like, what is your communication style? Yeah. Because a lot of this is and you have to learn reflective listening or reflective, discussion. So one of the greatest tools I know this is kind of off topic of what we're talking about, but one of the greatest tools my husband and I learned was this idea of I'm receiving you as being this.
Ooh,
and not being like snarky with it. Like, I'm receiving you as being angry today. Like, I am receiving what you're saying to me as being very hurtful.
Yeah.
And I don't think you meant it in that fashion. But right now, that's the story I'm telling myself.
Yes.
That you're trying to be hurtful to me. Is that what you intended for me to feel? And
that
sometimes,
in itself is,
it's like, he goes, no, I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings. I'm just being very direct with you about something. And because now we work together every day, so that's a whole nother ball game. But learning to have that conversation in that way.
Yeah.
And I have it with my team members. I'm receiving you today as being very stressed out, or being very overwhelmed.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to ask that question, right? Because let's just not keep it quiet and make assumptions. And then we're incorrect about what that may be.
Right.
I love that practice. If there's marriage advice, this is it.
Yeah.
Like, communicate effectively. And if something is said to you that, catches you back, give the benefit of the doubt to that other individual and just say, did you intend for it to come out that way? And I love that I'm receiving in this capacity. It's genius.
And this is the story I'm telling. Somebody told me that one the other day. I'm like, oh, I like that too. The story I'm telling myself is.
Yes. Well, and how far does that story go, right? You keep it in your head and it just does its own thing. And next thing you've formulated this whole thing that hasn't even happened.
Right.
Is there a particular moment throughout your career that really stands out to you almost as a stamp of validation of why you're doing what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. No, there's been a few of those. I have two that come to mind kind of like most prominently. I represent a dad who reminds me a lot of my husband. And unfortunately, there have been times in chambers when we're having discussions with the judge in that case where I have said that. I'm like, I'm so emotional about this case, Your Honor, because it's touching at this thing. Yeah. And I am not going to give up on fighting for this point. And thankfully, the judge was like, okay, I get it. I get it. And so it was a case of what we call parental alienation. And There's a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists who are going to tell you there's no such thing as parental alienation syndrome, and there isn't. There is no diagnosis of parental alienation syndrome, but it happens. People alienate their children from the other parent for whatever reason. It doesn't happen in every case, obviously, but when it does happen, it can be very brutal, and it happens in a way that is kind of a pattern. Like if you have one case, you can take kind of the core of that and go take it to the next case and apply it because it has a similar pattern. Mm-hmm. And so we won that case, and the court found that the mother had alienated the child or the children from the dad, and then gave dad joint custody. We're still in that battle. Like we won that. It's like a battle in a war, and it's still ongoing. But that getting that order in my hand that said, joint legal, joint physical. The court finds that mom has alienated these children from their father and awards dad joint custody. That's
a huge win.
A huge win.
Yeah.
And my husband was working in the firm by the time we got to that huge win, and it was such a validation for him of what he had experienced and gone through, that somebody cares and somebody was listening and made a difference. Another case I had was a hotly contested adoption. And when I got the case, I'd never done a contested adoption. I had done a lot of, step parents and grandmothers and aunts and uncles and private adoptions from agencies. But this was one where people are going to fight about who's going to go home with the baby at the end of the day. And one of my other lawyer friends had sent me the case. He had been in it, and then when it became contested, he's like, this is outside of my wheelhouse. You're a litigator. You do it. And I had a lot of tears over that one and a lot of prayers of I don't think I'm equipped for this. I don't think I can do it. And this was just a few years ago. So I'd been a lawyer for quite some time. And we ended up trying it over 3 days. And my clients eventually went home with their baby. And it was an elating, wonderful feeling. I'm still close to this family, and it's just a beautiful thing to watch them grow as a family. But knowing too that there was pain there,
absolute pain. Yeah.
My people went home with the baby, and other people didn't. Yeah. And being cognizant of, you can't really spike the ball in that kind of situation. You can be thankful and happy for your clients, but in the back of your mind, if there's not that kind of anguish or agony for the other person, then, I think we've kind of lost our humanity in that.
100%, yeah.
So I was not willing to just, spike the ball. It was, and they weren't either. I mean, they still try to maintain a connection, but it's just hard. Sometimes your win is somebody else's incredible loss.
Incredible. Yeah, I was just going to say which has got to be very emotionally heavy to carry, knowing that you've put so much momentum into achieving something, yet some of the fallout from that, is a life-changing thing that happens to somebody else, which is just devastating, but I love that. So when you're not, to kind of wrap up a little bit, when you're not running a law firm, helping do things very differently for family practice, what are you doing in your free time besides having date nights?
Oh, date nights are great.
And what's your go-to restaurant? Where do you guys like to go, or what do you like to do?
We love Purveyor.
Oh my gosh,
we love Mazara's, and we love Little Mazara's in Athens because we live in Madison, so we're kind of equidistant between the two.
Yeah.
So anything that Stephanie does, who owns Purveyor, anything she does is amazing.
Church Street Wine Shop, amazing. Lots of great restaurants here in Huntsville, and Stephanie Mel and her husband are just doing a phenomenal job.
People.
Yeah.
I've become very active in the Women's Business Council. That's become like an extracurricular activity in a lot of ways. Getting to work with Ashley Ingalls-Ross from the Chamber has been just amazing. I love her.
Love her.
I've met you because of my involvement at the Chamber, getting to sit next to each other at the trip to Montgomery. So getting to know new people in that way has been a kind of a new thing in the firm. I've kind of tried to transition from being so much in litigation and doing more of getting out and getting to know people and helping people. I'm enjoying getting to know other business owners that are part of the Women's Business Council, because then I can pour into them the things that have been poured into me, particularly some of the smaller business owners, and that's been so much fun for me.
Yep.
I also sing in the praise band at church. That's one of those kind of nuggets that most people don't know that I do sing, and I sing in our praise band at church.
So you still have that musical passion that is still with you.
Oh,
even.
Yeah,
that's great.
Music is one of my, rejuvenating activities.
Yeah.
And singing really loud in my shower, kind of thing. So, I'm a really great music artist in my shower, but
when no one else can hear me, I'm amazing.
Awesome.
That's how I am in my car. It's great. Like there's something about
It's awesome. But yeah, no, we enjoy doing that. And I recently, kind of on a different note, have started doing what's called the Lutheran Early Response Team training. So I'm looking forward to, in this next phase of life, having the opportunity to go out and assist in disaster areas.
Oh, wow.
Where our church will put together a team and we'll go out and do work. Yeah. Manual labor is great. I feel like it's such a good thing to like for your soul to like kind of get out angst and anxiety, and getting to do that to help other people.
Oh, that's a win-win.
Just amazing. So,
yeah, that's a win-win.
I'm enjoying that phase of life. So
love that. We're in Madison too. So I'm probably not far from you. So
that's right. We should get together more often.
We should. I know. We absolutely should. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amber. This has been really, really great. And I love to hear, to hear someone, especially with your background and your experience where, coming from the environment that you did, which sounds amazing, by the way. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, definitely, obviously you had a great relationship with your dad and, and regardless of what the situation was, I mean, you've turned something beautiful into the experience that some may not have an opportunity to do that or see where that positivity could come from. Yeah. And love that you're just doing things differently. And, knowing a lot of people who have experienced the services that you provide, what you do is just so critical, and it makes a huge difference, And just kudos to you for doing that. So I appreciate you so much. Yeah.
I appreciate you, Megan. I appreciate you letting me kind of come and share my story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time.